very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're more than welcome to another episode. This is episode 70 of the Cometh The Women show, brought to you by wigwam.ie SME Peer Support. Delighted to have you join us here today. In particular, delighted to have my special guest here this morning, very busy lady who's taken some time out to join us in the cafe this morning, and it is Elaina Fitzgerald Kane from Fitzgerald Woodlands Hotel and Spa in County Limerick. Elaina, please say hello and show us your coffee mug if you wouldn't mind.
Good morning, everybody. Delighted to be here with you this morning. I'm getting all the waves and handshakes. That's a great start anyway.
It's indeed lovely to have you here. And ladies and gentlemen, wait till you hear how busy this lady is. So we really appreciate you taking the time out. She's literally bouncing from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom to drag an entire industry back in, to breathe life back into it by next Monday morning. So we really appreciate your time this morning. Folks, let me just tell you a little bit about Elaina before we bring the lady herself in. So Elaina Fitzgerald Kane is the name, business name, Fitzgerald Woodlands Hotel and Spa in Adare, County Limerick. She's also president of the Irish Hotels Federation, and as if that's not enough, she was recently co-opted onto the Tourism Recovery Taskforce by the government. What does your business do? Hotel and Spa, passionately looking after guests and our team. Love that. Team is what it's all about. How long established? 37 years. How many employees? There were 200 before COVID struck. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next phase. So Elaina goes on to say that her first job in the hotel world started at the age of 9. No surprise there, given that it was a family affair. And by the time Elaina went to Shannon College of Hotel Management, she had worked in most areas of their family hotel. As part of her studies, Elaina gained experiences in Switzerland, the UK and the USA. And then she subsequently completed a master's in marketing management in the Michael Smurfit Graduate School of Business. Having lectured for a few years, Elaina returned to her family hotel, where she is now a director. Her specialty is in marketing, best practice and revenue management. And she says that's a bit of creativity and number crunching all rolled into one. Love that. Elaina is the newly elected president of the Irish Hotels Federation, following the footsteps of her mother Mary. And Elena's mission is for a better hotel world. Bula bus, ladies and gentlemen, bula bus. And here's something that you'll never have guessed. Elaina, what does somebody not know about you? Most people. And she says, I once played the piano for none other than Robbie Williams. Now there's a first. Coffee at 11 show. Great stuff. Elaina, it's lovely, lovely, lovely to have you here, and thank you for taking time out. And by the way, before we get into the chat, Elaina, and we're looking forward to it, I always say to our guests, we can Google the business, we can Google Woodlands, we can Google IHF, we can Google even the Tourism Recovery Taskforce. So it's really, we're hoping to get to know you, if you don't mind. And therefore, we're going to ask you, would you go right back to those early years growing up in a family hotel? Would you take us up through some of those stories, please?
Sure, thanks very much. And feel free to cut me off and mute me as you see fit as you go along. Because as Stefan and many of you know, I can be a bit of a talker. It's in the DNA. So my parents, the year I was born, 43 years ago, you know my age at the get-go, and my parents started with a 4-bedroomed bed and breakfast. My father was a market gardener. And my mother just found it really, even though she was the eldest of 8 from a farming family, she found it really, really tough going. Dad was from Kerry. A lot of his family were in the B&B business, which really wasn't that established here in Limerick. So against the backdrop of Adare, they decided to open their 4-bedroom B&B. In the early 80s, we morphed into a guest house stroke hotel. Challenges along the way, and many of you probably have heard my mother quote, you know, at one stage she went to the bank manager and she was told, my dear lady, go home and mind your children. And I suppose that was the mindset that you had. It's not that long ago, but you know, barriers along the way. And interestingly, my parents would have told you, you know, that it was hard back then, but there's a sense of how much more difficult it is now in terms of business. So look, lots of hard work along the way, trying to be innovative, you're trying to give the best value. My mother is a big dreamer. She dreams very, very big. And, you know, I suppose managing that sense of dreaming and the risk and, you know, trying to take calculated risks and that. So over the years then we morphed, building on a bit of this, building on a bit of that. If you're familiar with the building, you'll know that we're on 2 floors, but we're on 40 acres of our own organic grounds. So what that means is over time, the building would have morphed. So in the early 90s was probably our first big, you know, €1 million plus extension. In tandem with that, then we hosted the Ploughing Championships in Adare. So that was kind of a great backdrop to kind of bring, I suppose, what was probably maybe a guest house stroke small hotel and give it a little bit more of a natural branding in what would have been kind of its natural habitat of, you know, agri farming community, that sort of thing. And that I should probably say that our hotel was originally probably born out of the fact that Ahanish Illumina was being built, and there was a whole, I suppose, requirement for accommodation in the area for the 2,000 odd that were actually working on the construction of the site. What actually ended up working the site afterwards was a much lesser number, but that was actually the big reason why, you know, that big jump was taken in the early 80s. So in the early 90s then we had our first €1 million expansion, did other bits and pieces, making ballroom bigger. In 1999 it was kind of our first move towards more of a resort style property where we built our leisure club, and that few years later then we built on our spa. And I suppose, look, over time we've morphed into more of a resort style property. Interesting, we've gone full circle now because we're on 40 acres of our own organic grounds. We have a beautiful organic garden. And that's really, really important to us. So supplying our own leaves. If you're having mojitos or anything during the summertime, they're all organic, totally. You can have as many as you want, because the produce comes from our own garden. We now have, you know, 90 odd bedrooms. We have 2 restaurants. We will be opening with 1 restaurant in terms of going forward, in terms of bar, do a lot of kind of occasion-led dining, lots of private rooms, fantastic leisure club and spa, kids facilities. We have, I suppose, our beautiful spa area, which is a destination in its own right. And now I suppose one of the things we're doing is kind of, you know, what we would have been doing even before COVID was kind of looking at the grounds. So we would have added a 1.2 kilometre nature trail. In terms of our organic garden, it's amazing, all year round garden. And we're currently building beautiful picnic areas around the base of the trees and that. So very much aware of kind of our hinterland and our surrounding and how we fit then into the community that is Adare and how we fit into the Midwest and, you know, the Wild Atlantic Way driving loop. I'm still a little bit touchy about the fact that we're not on the Wild Atlantic Way. So anybody who knows me will know that. And I suppose that's the story of the physical growth of the building, but then you have the team. So some of the people that would have started with us when we first became a hotel 37 years ago and even before that, they're still with us. We have whole households that work with us. We have multi-generations of family that work with us. And I suppose it's that very much I, together with my 3 brothers and my mum, unfortunately, my dad passed away 5 years ago, but we all treat ourselves very much in the team scenario where we work side by side, open door policy in the offices, very much a collaborative effort. And I suppose that's something that I'm really, really passionate about. And in tandem with that, then I suppose from my own perspective, because you know, I won't say I flirted with lecturing for a few years. My heart was very much in it, but when you're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning trying to keep everything going, you know, you know, I woke up the morning, I got married correcting exam papers and I took them on honeymoon with me. So when people often say, well, look, at what point did you decide that wasn't for you anymore? It wasn't that I had so many victims out there in the educational front. It was just that whole time scenario and something had to give. So at the time that gave. But I'm really, really interested in education. From my own perspective, I didn't list probably the more recent things I've done from, you know, like Cornell courses, very much into revenue management, strategic marketing, learning from the best. I would have done, you know, digital marketing courses. And interestingly, not that I'm a huge digital marketeer in terms of my technology is probably somewhere, because I think if I got so embraced in it, it would rule my world. So in a way, I keep a little bit of a safe distance, but understanding the principles of how it would work and how it should work and setting milestones and how we review things, that's kind of why I would have done that. And I suppose that whole education is equally mirrored in our team. You know, there are many that we want to support to get to that point of self-educating. Equally, you have, you know, team members who never want to do that. They're quite happy doing what they're doing. And those team members can be very, very valuable as well because they can have consistency, and it's how maybe you could try and, I suppose, cajole them to come along the journey.
Sure. Boolabus. We've all been brought up to speed beautifully there. There's a 37-year history in about 6 minutes. So well done you. Brilliant. But if I may, just before we move on to this next phase, I'd like to just reflect back on a few things, if you don't mind. I've been scribbling notes here to beat the band. A couple of things that jumped out. You answered one question, which I was going to ask, which is it's on the hotel now is built on the site of that original 4-bedroom B&B. Is that right? Yeah. Fantastic. And was the foresight there back in the day? Did the family purchase 40 acres with some big plans, Mary's big plans in mind, or how did that happen?
Yes and no, because the 40 acres, my dad actually bought them. And there's a great story about how my dad ended up coming to Adare, and I probably alluded to it before we started.
Dad was the youngest of a family of 6, and they were really hard working in terms of they sold strawberries into Killarney. So that whole sense of connection with hotels and market gardening was very much there. And so he went off to an All-Ireland one weekend, which was a big trip from Kerry upwards. But he never came home. He went off then to the UK and kind of sent his mother a telegram 6 weeks later and said, listen, I'm here and I'm here in Clapham and whatever. And of course, his mother was heartbroken that her dearest darling, prized possession, youngest son had just went off. But he kind of said, well, look, if you help me to buy, a farm in Ireland, I'll come home. And that is literally what happened. Now, I know if my son came to me and said, will you help me buy something at home? You could get a totally different answer today.
You'd be saying you're doing grand in London, keep it on.
Yeah, there you go. It's a little bit different right now. So he was definitely spoiled anyway, for sure, but very hard working. So when they bought, I suppose, when he bought the 40 acres, because my mother definitely married a man with debt anyway, maybe not money, but she married into it. But the mindset was about having enough to sustain, from a farming perspective. And even he had his own house built by then. And my mother says, even in the context of the bedrooms when he was building them, it was very much with the mindset, well, it sinks in the rooms and stuff like that, before the days of ensuite. But interestingly, they went on holidays in the late 70s with a cousin of Dad's who was very dynamic. He was in the pub business back in Ballybunion and would have had, great trade going. And that was the first time they kind of properly saw, ensuite rooms, whatever. And sure, look, when they came home, when the whole Ahanish kind of boom came, it couldn't be anything else but that. And then, so my mother, she's still a dreamer, and we still get so much inspiration from her because, things like the recession really make you so much more kind of calculated about things when it comes to risks. And, that was the one thing that I'd say from my own perspective, I would have been probably very creative, in terms of that. But when the recession came, I felt that personally I came to base, I had no creativity. I couldn't even go outside and see it anymore. And it probably took 10 years to come back to that point. But my mother is the dreamer. She's dreaming big all the time. She's pushing us on. There's the wacky things that you're kind of looking and going, geez, we can't do that. But it's about finding the balance. It's about finding the balance between what's calculated, taking a risk. It's about learning from the mistakes that you make along the way. And we've made plenty of them, that's for sure.
You have. And as my mother would say, the person who never made a mistake made nothing. So it's a joy. Right, just let me reflect a few other things that are worth noting. For Kathy Merritt, who's joined us from the States, yet again, we're going back somewhere. This has been a feature of the Coffee at 11 show. Everybody's going back somewhere, back to Ballybunion, back to Tralee, back to Limerick, right? So it's great. And genuinely love the fact that for 37 years you've had people on your team, and that whole families, multi-generations of one family are working within your hotel. And that clearly shows that the family hotel ethos hasn't been lost. In fact, it's been built upon all those years for almost 4 decades. So Bula Bus, congratulations. And there's a wonderful picture I saw on social media. I should have taken the time to pull it off and look it up, and maybe Eamon could root it out perhaps. And it's a fabulous picture of Mary rolling out the red carpet in very recent times. So this lady is no spring chicken, but she's just a glamorous lady and such a hard work. It's phenomenal. So you have a tough act to follow, dare I say it. Listen, great.
She's moulding me well. We live together now, so she definitely moulds me that way,
There is no escaping, so there's no escaping. So come here, on top of all of that, before we go into this, the phase that we're currently in, because it's very challenging, do you have any endearing stories of your time in the hotel? Any funny incidents that you would retell at Christmas? You're here with your friends now.
Oh, there's so many, and there's so many fun stories. You'd be amazed, like from false teeth to just crazy things sometimes that can happen. God, I'm having all these sort of flashbacks now and thinking I actually couldn't put some of these out into any, even amongst family, you'd be nearly afraid to say them. But there's a great story of how, we had German guests staying. It's a good while ago. And they obviously, part of their holiday experience was going off fishing, and they came back with their lovely piece of fish, and that was probably in the time when you could put it into the fridge and you could cook it for them.
But my father, God rest him, he was a desperate picker, and he'd be up late in the middle of the night. You'd go, and if you're ever on holidays, you'd hear the spoon scraping off the bowl of fruit in the middle of the night. He just had his own routine. But unfortunately, this particular night, whatever notion he got, decided to eat the fish. So he cooked the fish and ate it. So the Germans, woke up the next morning and in very, I suppose, calculated kind of style, like, where's my fish? How do you explain your way out of that? So that's probably one of the stories, but there's so many.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
Probably smiling away and saying, if the walls could talk in terms of our hotel, but there's, there's so many funny stories. And at any stage right here, even now, we could have an invasion of children. That's the world of Zooming. So you take what life throws at you.
You do. Great stuff, great stuff. Thank you for going there. Touch on Robbie Williams. How did that happen?
Oh gosh, well now in Limerick, as you all well know, we never had too many opportunities to visit Dublin for an All-Ireland. And in true Fitzgerald form in 1994, the whole family were chucking up, as was so much of the county. And we had a wedding to do and we had whatever to do. And so by the time we arrived up, we had to stop in the Red Cow, the great Tommy Moran's, that whole loyalty in the place was buzzing and hopping. And we rocked on then to the hotel that we were staying, which was the Westbury at the time, which would be fabulous a place. So there was a nice cohort of Limerick people staying there, negotiated preferential rates and the whole lot. So when we arrived outside, it was a hotel that we would have stayed in at the time, probably fairly regularly. There was a huge gang of people outside who said, Jesus, they don't look like a match crew in our own heads, And as we got closer, they were a little bit younger. And look, it was probably 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, getting ready for a big day. And so we weren't really taking it in. I wasn't to take that fan. None of my family would have been in that zone. And so we rocked on in, and there was another, I suppose, two couples there that had come from the Red Cow. So I said, you know what, maybe we'll have a drink in the lounge. They had this beautiful upstairs lounge. So when we went up there anyway, we were having our drink. There was this other crowd. They were very noisy down towards the end around the piano. And they were playing away. And look, they probably had a few drinks on board and whatever else. And my mother, of course, said to me, Jesus, will you go up there and show them how to play? Now, for those of you who know me, I'm not really what you call a great player. A bit of a singer when I get going and when the confidence gets going, which takes a while. So I rocked on up, and I actually didn't know who Take That were. So there was a guy playing who found out was Robbie Williams kind of subsequently after. And I have become a fan after, and literally said, do you mind if I have a go? And whatever. So I went off and played probably something random. It definitely wasn't Take That. It definitely wasn't pop or whatever. So they were all roaring, shouting and saying, listen, maybe you should sing with us tomorrow night. I hadn't a clue what they were saying. So sat down. But it was only the next day when we woke up and read the papers that we actually realised that Take That had been staying in our hotel. And it was a big joke at the time that I played for Take That, not realising. So there you go.
I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Thank
There
you.
you go.
That's just brilliant. That's pure humanity at its best. It's pure Limerick at its best. It's pure Ireland at its best. That's just the way stuff happens. So wonderful stuff. I'm intrigued by your mother Mary, because, and I loved what you said earlier. I don't know how that poor bank manager survived talking to Mary Fitzgerald and saying, what did she say? My dear lady, go home and mind your children. Oh my goodness. Is the man still around?
The funniest thing was, I think she actually kind of knew him as well. I think he lived in Adare as well at the time. She actually did a talk. She could appear now at any stage. My husband has just appeared into the room. So there you go. We've been talking about invasions. She actually did a little thing for Tina O'Dwyer in the tourism space not that long ago. And literally it came up, and Polo Keneally, who many of you know, who's a writer for the Irish Independent, a very celebrated travel writer and a great advocate for Irish travel and travel in general, he kind of picked up on it or whatever. So we were slacking her. So I think she went on Twitter after that in terms of having a profile. But that's mom all over. But, she's resilient. She's really, really resilient. She is as dedicated now as what she was back in the day. We're continuously trying to hold her back. It's funny because we always have had a family roster, and I just implemented one again, was from this, I suppose, weekend on properly. And I gave her Sunday off, and then I said, look, there's a long week there, Mom. And I actually wrote her in on Mondays in PR. So I was basically trying to say, your job is to go around and to talk to people socially distanced. Now, she'll be a bit challenged around that. And she came to me today and she says, why would I want to take Sunday off? And I said, well, now, Mum, it's our first week. People are expecting to see us all back. And you'll have 7 days of it ahead of you. So look, you really should be taking a small bit of a pause. You'll do, Friday, Saturday, pause on Sunday, and off you go again. But she wouldn't want it any other way. She'd want to be stuck in 7 days a week. And we as a family always say, it wouldn't matter if there were 1,000 of us in the room in terms of the other siblings. There you go, right? Most people just want to see Mum. That's the reality of it. And I suppose we've learned a lot from her. We curtail her as much as we can, but she does way too much. But the one thing I would say is she used to travel a nice bit. After Dad passed, it was a readjustment. So she's really reconnected with her own sisters. Mum is the eldest of 8. She's probably other groupings now, and that's probably what drives her on. She loves travel, no more than myself, but we all have to find, what drives us on, what motivates us and stimulates us outside of work. And for Mum, it's travel, but then she's always looking what everybody else is doing and trying to bring that back as well. So that picture that you see there, you couldn't rehearse it. That's just everything for us. It's the real deal.
Ladies and gentlemen. Eamon Smith, thank you for going off and finding that. I appreciate the team working away in the background. That was just gorgeous. But you see, that a picture paints 1,000 words, so Elaina could explain her mother all day long. I think that just nails it. Doesn't need to be doing. There's plenty of people employed in the hotel, I'm quite sure, whose job that actually is. And there's Mary leading the charge. Happy days, well done, fantastic. And by the way, if she is around, perhaps you'd dispatch her husband, she might come in and say a quick hello, that would be lovely.
No problem. I'm actually upstairs. This beautiful background is actually technically the headboard of my bed, because when you have children, you do. So if she was funny, she's like, oh, what do you do now? And the thing is now, if she was dialing in and kind of looking as I was talking, because inevitably, like my husband just came in there a few minutes ago, and I sent the text, try not to come into the room for the next hour. And there you go. But she could be up yet. I'll text her and I'll get her to stick her head up if she's around,
Do that. That'd be lovely. That'd be lovely. It's just, if it's possible that she'd pop in and say hello, I think it'd be just fabulous to honour her. Listen, it's an iconic property. You're an iconic dynasty of a family, and what you've contributed to Adare, what you've contributed to County Limerick, and what you've contributed to Munster and indeed Ireland nationally in terms of the hospitality sector is legendary. Mary was president of the Irish Hotels Federation. If I'm not mistaken, did I hear this correctly? Back when 9/11 struck.
Yeah, Mum, 20 years ago, Mum was the first, woman president of the IHF. Don't like to get too caught up on the whole woman piece, because many of you probably know I'm not what you call probably a big advocate for feminism. I just see it as getting on with my job, and I don't necessarily like the distinction or whatever. But I suppose from a first, female president's perspective, she said on her own right, I'm the third. It's 20 years later. Mum had the drama of foot and mouth as well as 9/11. So it's interesting, in the very first, I think, crisis COVID committee meeting we had, and ironically enough, the very first COVID meeting was the very first day of my new job. And we had our annual conference actually up with Stefan in the beautiful Galmont Hotel in the centre of Galway. Product placement there for you, Stefan. And that was the very first day of our first meeting. And geez, I set out this beautiful 10 points of what I wanted to achieve in terms of people and best practice and connecting. And it's just like, no, there are still tenets of that going through what we're trying to do right now. But who would have ever known, where this was going? But at our very first special meeting, because I brought in kind of an experienced team, past presidents, etc. Because even at that early stage, it looked like, that this was going to be something like we'd never had before. And without knowing how severe it would get. But one of the past presidents made the point, said to the chief executive, we can't have any more Fitzgeralds, they only bring drama, and it's a very telling sign of, what happened. So look.
And you know what? Sorry, if I may,
where it'll go.
If I may, and that's actually why I brought it up. It wasn't to do with that Mary was female and that you're female president. That wasn't it at all. It was that, two serious crises on the world stage that had significant impact in the industry, and two Fitzgeralds are heading the thing up. So roll on 20 years. If another Fitzgerald in 20 years' time is appointed, watch what's coming down, what tsunami is about to hit. I love it, fantastic. But look, it's wonderful, and of course, you know, your mother helped the industry navigate through those very stormy waters. We lost our business in Limerick. We had the Bewley's Cafe on Cruiser Street when foot and mouth disease struck, and we were just coming out of that, and 9/11 struck. Sure, it just wiped us. That and Celtic Tiger rents. It's why I'm sitting here in a virtual cafe today with no overhead. Woohoo! To light up myself. Right. Elaina, your industry has been, look, the entire economy has been decimated, okay? Some sectors will recover more quickly than others. Some won't recover perhaps at all. Some businesses probably won't get back up. It's beyond everybody's control. And, you know, you not only have you got the family business to be concerned about, but you've on your shoulders an entire industry. How are you all coping, and how are you all feeling about Monday? What's going to happen, please?
Okay, so there's a few questions rolled in there, and that. So look, the first thing that I'd say is one of the things, you know, you talk about gratitude, and you did that, I think, very well, Eamon, as your lead in. And I've gone on record saying this before. The thing that I'm most grateful for out of this is support. So support within family, support within community, and that community is Adare, and that community is our hotelier community across the country. And even, you know, you could go a bit further than that in terms of Europe and that. So that whole sense of community that we have in Ireland Inc., that has showed its true value and true colours like we've never seen before. And that, you know, so from a hotel perspective, I suppose I'm very lucky that the boys really got stuck in. I didn't have to worry about it. I was in a very unique position. So if I was, you know, in a general manager of another hotel or an owner of it, I don't think I would have been able to, I suppose, chart the course or that as much as I can right now in the extraordinary times. But look, we all make the best of the circumstances that we have. So God only knows. But I was definitely spared, I suppose, you know, a lot of the decisions that had to be made in the hotel, you know, on this occasion. Now, as a hotel industry and as a tourism industry, for those of you who may be involved in it, we are on our knees like never before. As you face into the summertime, you know, even with all the talk, there are a handful of hotels, you know, that have great, they have, I suppose, you know, really good occupancy or, you know, on their books for July and August. So there's a few things that you need to be mindful of. First, our last straw poll was only 19% of bedrooms were sold across Ireland for July, and only 25% across August. Now, in some cases, I was talking to a hotelier last week who's from Donegal, only 20% of their hotel activity is actually in bedrooms. So if you take that 20% and if you get, you know, 20% of that, you're left with hotels opening with a base of 4 and 5% in some cases. Now that's in the extreme. So, you know, for places that, yes, we got the green light to open, and yes, we got the green light, you know, to open 3 weeks earlier, which was an endorsement into how far public health has come, and that's number one. And that, but for many, you know, for our business, you need a base of business. You don't just open and people are there in front of you. It depends on where you are. Some people would have been very much pivoted towards international business and that as well. And then, you know, when our announcement came, you know, for a lot of hotels like our own, weddings would have been 36% of our business. And that's quite similar for a lot of, you know, hotels around our region and throughout Ireland, and more so on a rural basis. And so it's the mainstay of the rest of your year. Yes, you have the kind of the great, you know, the better July and August, which sustains a lot of other months, but you still need the weddings and the other things. So we initially, when the roadmap came out on that May Bank holiday weekend, large gatherings were going to be allowed from the 20th of July, which was phase 4, and phase 5 was small gatherings from the 20th of July and large gatherings from the 10th of August. And so a whole 7 weeks later, we got a clarity of what that meant. And that, so can you imagine how much business had fallen off in that 7 weeks? So unfortunately, like, government did certain things really, really well. But when I look back and you know, at the time you get the announcement and then you're saying, okay, it's just, there was a lack of detail. And if you take the notion of gatherings in 7 weeks, don't come out and talk about gatherings if you're not going to give a sense of where this is going. So we have a lot of challenges now. We have a challenge because prior to this, there were 260,000 people working in tourism across Ireland. 70% of those jobs were outside of Ireland. Interestingly, after the last recession, 90,000 new jobs were created in tourism. So we were one of the major levers in terms of job creation. And when you think of hotels, it's not the whole economic aspect of it. Like when I look at, what money went out of our hotel last year, because everyone thinks about the money that's coming in. You don't necessarily think about what's going out. But obviously in terms of wages and the multiplier effect, and actually interesting, it's 230 people that we had employed with us before we closed. I wrote down 200, but I should correct myself there. And people at all levels and stages. So it's the money that goes into the households, the multiplier effects. It's the money that's spent on local suppliers and all the jobs that supports. It's the monies that were spent for us last year. We spent 650,000 on, what we call capex, so kind of refurbishments and projects like that. It's the $250,000 that we spent on sponsorship. So that whole sense of community, it's not just about the hotel in Woodlands, it's about how that spreads out and that. And if you take that, if you multiply that across the country, the impact of, not, I suppose, supporting tourism and saving. And I suppose, look, to go back to what you said earlier, Colm, we were the first to fall. We were the hardest hit. We will most likely be the slowest to recover. And it's very frustrating when you see funds, and look, it was great that the agri community are being supported. 106,000 jobs, and there was funds given to the agri community, I think 2 weeks ago. Last week, sport. And now sport is not a business, so you can't compare it from a jobs terms, because it's the whole, I suppose, social and the mental health and well-being. But, we have 260,000 people who really need support. And there are people who said they'll open, who may not open. And beyond September, we've no sense of where this is going. And we really need clarity from government. The guidelines are the guidelines. We've done everything that we can do. Fáilte Ireland have come out with a charter in terms of, we've invested in an incredible machine that sanitizes everything for 30 days. Now we'll be doing all the sanitizing within, but we have that baseline. All our staff have to be sanitized by that machine before they come in, and they're sanitized effectively for 24. But we'll be going through, not the optics, because it's reinforcing it. So, it's how we get that messaging out there to government, because they in the first instance need to act. And I suppose it was interesting, I sent an email off this morning saying, at what point are we going to see Leo Varadkar or other government ministers coming out and saying, go on your holidays? We had that kind of go and explore Ireland like it's the very first time, but we've had nothing since. And even that basic act would do a lot. Now there's a whole host of measures that we're looking for. I'm privileged to be involved with the Tourism Recovery Taskforce, the voice of hotels, the voice of industry, people on the ground. There comes great responsibility with it. Great to see the interim report that we put out yesterday. So there's a whole host of measures that we need. But what we also need is for people to put on the Irish jersey and staycation. There are some people who are not really economically affected by this, severely. There are other people who are really economically affected by this. And it's the jobs. And I suppose if you look around your own community and you think your local coffee shops or, your local restaurants, you and people like you are the difference between them getting through this until there's more clarity around groups and until, there's more clarity, I suppose, around international travel. And, now's not the time for international travel as I would see it. But you'll see even in terms of the task force, what they advocated for, and I think was very well put, was for a testing regime to support maintaining health as part of travel. And we've seen this in Iceland in particular as a very, very good example of that. So look, we're in a place like we never were before. We are lucky that we have each other to support each other and to reach out. It can be very frustrating in terms of what I feel is, a lack of progress in so many respects. Someone messaged me last week and said cap of 100 weddings. It was never on the table. It hasn't been on the table for a long, long time, but somewhere along the line, somebody decided, okay, this is what's fit for purpose. Now I spoke to somebody yesterday who has a ballroom of 900 square meters and they have a cap of 100. So, when we're being asked to live by 2 meters and then you see this kind of just disconnect between the cap and that, it doesn't make sense. Everybody wants to be responsible, but it's almost like you've been singled out. And it's not that it's for now either, because in reality, when they brought forward the notion of gatherings, particularly in the weddings business, no weddings were ever going to happen until the 20th of July from the first roadmap. And the ones that were going to happen from the 20th of July onwards, they were always going to be so intimate, really reading between the lines. And now if intimate could mean 20 to some 30 or 50. So in all likelihood, in terms of the gatherings that are remaining on the books, they were all willing to work with whatever the government guidelines are. But the challenge we have now is that we don't have a sense of where this is going in terms of September, October, November, and people are making those decisions now. And if we don't get that clarity there'll only be 10% of the wedding market remaining, and the wedding business in Ireland is 1.5 billion business. So right now, 18,000 couples are affected. So even if we could get clarity on that, and as I said, nobody's roaring shouting about the 2 versus 1 now, and you'll see if you look back through it, for a long time we've been saying, you know, when the time is right, or working towards that. And the same applies. So it's actually that lack of clarity that's the most difficult part. It's led to a complete lack of customer confidence. And I cannot understand how you have such resources in terms of government and all those committees, that is there not a sense of how this is going to map out, or, you know, a scenario A, B and C, and where fit in as part of that? I struggle to get my head around it, because from a tourism perspective, we've mapped out, well, if we get this amount of supports, this is how many jobs are going to be saved. If we get this as a medium thing, this is how many. And this is the baseline if nothing is done, and the baseline is bleak.
Elaina, the baseline is bleak. The baseline is bleak. It really is. And we feel for you all. Ex-hospitality industry myself, you know, my business fell foul of those circumstances that Mary was when she was president at the time of the IHF. And the difference this time round, dare I say it, is that back then when our business failed, it was a cafe on Cruiser Street in Limerick, we were the only ones in the boat. We were the only ones whose business was failing in the area, and therefore, you know, it was difficult for the institutions, the banks, our staff, indeed, suppliers, etc., to get on board and understand what we were going through. When COVID hit, when Leo Varadkar in Washington closed down Ireland, certainly the schools were closed down on the 12th of March, our school lunch business fell off a cliff immediately. But I was absolutely zen calm, because I knew everybody's in the same boat, therefore the government must step up. And they have done to a large extent. Let's, you know, credit where credit is due. They've managed to keep us all afloat. Now we're getting to the phase, you know, the if you like, the thin end of the wedge, right, where we've got to start asking, what are we going to do with the economy? And your industry is highly labour intensive. You know, this is coming from experience. You're the grey hair lads, I'm only 27, right? It's highly labour intensive. It requires a significant level of investment just to keep the wheels on. You're absolutely right about the money that's coming in is only one thing. It's the money that goes back out into the community is where it's all at. And I'm here with Elaina encouraging us all next week, get back out there and, you know, wear your mask if that's your thing, right? Or it's the right thing for you. But go and have a cup of coffee somewhere and go and support these people, because it's been a scary time for them. And I'm hopeful and somewhat confident. I've nothing to back that up, but I'm hopeful and somewhat confident that sense will prevail and the supports will be put in place. Because if they're not, we're looking at a catastrophe in time. So, you know, here's to you and all of your team and your entire industry. And ladies and gentlemen, Staycation is where it's at this year. Staycation is where it's at this year. So, Elaina, thanks for being so open and honest with us. And we genuinely wish you and your colleagues and your family, of course, but your colleagues in the industry, every success. And, you know, I, for one, I cannot wait to get back into that environment. I really can't, you know.
Exciting, you know, it's like the smell of food in the kitchen. We did a trial run of our restaurant last night with our COVID committee. And in fairness, we're very lucky in Limerick because we have that Midwest response group. So great training put in place, you know, to support people that were furloughed and people who want to potentially get back into business and that. But it's just the momentum, seeing people back. And I suppose it's the desire to bring so many more back. But, you know, the clarity is needed really to be able to make serious kind of plans around those, you know. So look, I'm hopeful. I'm just disappointed it hasn't happened. But there's also probably a sense of the scale of tourism. It's so profound versus potentially other industries that there's almost a sense of it needs more potentially than what has been put out for other, I suppose, organisations.
It does. But do you share that sense of optimism that will come? Or am I living in cuckoo land here?
Well, you know, I have trust in government. They've, as you said, done a great job in terms of suppressing the virus, whatever. I'm frustrated though. I'm frustrated that for months and months and a whole community, you know, asking and being patient and, you know, working with, you know, bits of drip feed of information and, you know, that whole sense of bringing it forward but not having the base there. But it was the right thing to do because, look, you have to try and get back. But I worry about what lies beyond. But I have trust. I suppose today is going to be an interesting day in terms of how the political backdrop will change. And in a way, there's a sense of, God, you're nearly starting from the briars again, you know, and that. But then that keeps you fresh, you know, and that keeps you moving. And that's the thing. We can't stop advocating. You know, the messaging probably hasn't changed dramatically, but you're trying to present it in different angles and make it a little bit more up to date, but it's fundamentally the same, and going at it in all angles and that. But great, as I said, great support from our community of hoteliers. Yeah. Writing to TDs and writing to ministers and facilitating, giving up their time for media, and whilst they're trying to do their day job as well, because in some cases we have lots of hotels who are providing essential services as well, and that was a very, very tough station for a long time, you know, as they learned, and we've learned from them in terms of their experiences too. So look, yeah, absolutely.
Those at the coalface, and genuine, heartfelt best wishes to everybody in the industry. And we'll all look back on 2020, right? We'll all of us, right? And we'll never forget it. Be written down in the annals, and but we will be looking back on it. That's the point. At some point, we will be looking back on it, regardless of how tough it's going to be to get to that point where we're looking back and saying, okay, please God, we won't go there again. But for what it's worth, I'm sensing huge pent-up demand. Right. I don't think the issue is going to be will there be people outside your door wanting to get in. I think it's going to be how are you going to manage crowd control. That's my absolute belief for the entire industry, because here in Ireland we're social animals. That's what we do. That's what we do, right? I thought this thing was going to last 3 weeks. Here we are 4 months later, right? Everybody's chomping at the bit to get back out and go into a cafe and have a cup of coffee and a slice of apple tart or a Sunday roast. So I think the demand is going to be there. Can't speak for the bedrooms piece for now, but you know that will come. But I absolutely believe people in Ireland, they can't go anywhere, right? They've been pent up and locked up for months now. I think there's going to be huge domestic demand, and we genuinely hope that that comes to pass for you and all your colleagues. So, boo the bus, boo the bus. Listen, lovely having you in the cafe today, and you know you're such a busy woman. Thank you for taking the time out and joining us. This lovely group have come together over the last few months and have formed this Coffee at 11 show in our little virtual cafe. And it's great to have people like you come in and just give us a perspective, because most of us, you know, live in our own little bubbles and we don't understand what's going on in the wider world. So thank you for that. I'm going to go to Q&A, if you don't mind. I'm going to go to Q&A from the floor. We get you back to your various jobs.
Not off the hook yet.
No, not off the hook yet. No. Just a few minutes. But before I go to Q&A from the floor or comment from the floor, I'm sure that somebody wants to pop in. Could I ask you, as you, Elaina Fitzgerald Kane, what are you taking from COVID?
What am I taking from COVID? I'm taking a sense of support, a sense of community, a sense of changed values in everybody, you know, whether it's as guests or whether it's family or the people you work with, and how we can manage that and build from it, because we're in a bubble right now. And in a way, as we strive to move forward, the comforts that we probably have, you know, they're going to change. And I suppose it's to make sure that we're resilient enough, but I think that resilience will come from that sense of community and that sense of support. And that, you know, and I'd love to be able to say, you know, people talk about, some people said, you know, they loved, there was so many positives to lockdown. And I suppose there was. I mean, I've been at home myself for, you know, more or less 3 or 4 months solid. But I can't honestly say I've probably got to enjoy that sense of, you know, 2K, 5K. We were good at certain things, but the last few weeks as we got ready to reopen it, morphed away from. But it's at some point I hope to probably be able to balance that up again. But for now, my focus is on supporting our team, getting back to work in our hotel. And that's going to have to, within reason, take every energy that we have. My kids are safe. You know, we have a great support network for them, and supporting our wider community in Ireland and the challenges. And I really kind of have that sense of putting on the green jersey as an individual in terms of, you know, staying in Ireland, spending locally, doing everything we can, and just trying to bring as many people along the journey as we can. And that's just going to take a little bit more than the ordinary everyday effort. And I think we all have to be mindful of that going forward.
Putting on the green jersey, that's what it's all about. And there are millions of us. There are millions of us that will put on the green jersey, and we'll support you. So, Elaina, just lovely. Thank you very much for taking the time out to come in and visit us this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, who would like to come into the conversation for just a moment before we go to Princess Shelley? Who'd like to ask a question or make a comment in support? Sarah Ward. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Hi, how are you, Elaina?
Hi, Sarah.
Two areas I wanted to touch off, actually. First of all, your mother. You are so lucky. You have such a wonderful mother, and she sounds like a fantastic lady. Yeah, I'd love to have met her actually this morning, but unfortunately, I guess she's a busy lady. She's a busy lady.
You know what? I should try and ring her and to tell her to come up. I don't know where she is.
I'd say she's a character.
But I chuckle, but that's what I won't say keeps us in the straight and narrow.
It's good she keeps you on your toes. It's great. It's great. Keeps her young.
Are you still around? Could you come down for a minute very quickly, just as a quick community here? They want to say hello to you on Zoom. Is that okay? All right. Okay. There you go.
And the other quick thing I wanted to ask you was I'm mad to Staycation, because I'm actually very excited about it. I love going to see places, and I want to go see places. But the vibes I'm getting are that everything is first of all, very booked up, and also very, very expensive. Yeah. Can you touch off that for a minute? Because I'm willing to go and staycation, no problem. But if all the prices are like extremely elevated, it's going to limit my possibilities.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks a million for bringing that up. And I suppose, look, if you look at what's been trending on social media, there is a bit of places, that appear to be more expensive than not. And there was another one during the week and that. So let me take that question, I suppose, first, right? There's plenty of availability in most places. There are a handful of places that are in really traditional, probably leisure, coastal areas, maybe close to greenways, that sort of thing, that are very, because, cycling has become the new go-to thing. So there are a handful of properties that are fairly busy but not booked up. Now, 2 weeks ago, right, if you were to book in our hotel right now, you can book for €95 for B&B, okay? You can book for a family for 125 B&B, 2 adults and 2 kids, breakfast, all the facilities, there are kids' activities, etc. For me, it's not necessarily about price, it's what represents value for money for me. And I think that's exceptional value. In the same weekend, I'm going to give you 2 other aspects of this now. I looked at the Hotel Westport. I use the same kind of filter, 4-star hotel with a pool and parking, okay? Family, 2 adults and 2 kids. I have 3. I wasn't going to leave one at home, right? Or Mary. Yeah. And that. So when I looked, we were $250 for a family for 2 nights B&B. Hotel Westport was $299, but that included a dinner. So they were probably maybe slightly better value than what we are. And then I said, okay, we'll go over to the sunny southeast. So I looked at the Riverside Riverside Park Hotel in Enniscorthy, and they were selling room only for about 170 or 180 euros. Now again, that is super value.
Yeah.
I went on to, that's from Booking Direct. So I went online then to an OTA, I can't say which one it is, but it's the very big one with the blue logos, etc., who many of you use, okay? And I put in my two adults, 2 kids, and I put my filters in, and then I went, oh, good Jesus, what is happening here? So for my 2 nights, literally, for the first 29th of June and the 30th, was coming up at whatever was 840 euros. I nearly had, sure. So straight away, and don't contact your team out of work hours. I texted and I said, oh my God, what is happening here? Because I know that's not right. We're not 400 euros a night, not to save our life.
Yeah.
There was a problem, there was a glitch with the system. It wasn't any of the information we inputted in, but something similar happened to another hotel, which ended up out this week and got a lot of traction. And some people were saying, look, the hotel is so high up in TripAdvisor rankings in Ireland. Actually, it's not bad. Someone else chipped in and said, well, actually, if you go online to their own website, it's at more or less half the price. So there's a few, I suppose, lessons here for us. The first is, there's lots of availability and there's lots of value to be had, and value means different things to different people. The second thing is that I'd say is book direct. You're always going to get the best options by booking direct. You are, in all likelihood, if there's going to be upgrades going, you're going to get it by booking direct, and that's the reality of it, because you're seen as being more loyal and somebody who's interested enough to communicate. The third thing I'd say is, if you come across something that you don't feel represents value for money, right, then don't go there, Yeah, but if it's not in your value, don't go there. And that. So when you hear, if you've been looking at things and you've been looking, you know, online travel agencies like the one with the blue lights, here she comes, right? What I'd say to you is, you know, there are, you know, circumstances where the information has not been presented correctly. So in my case, what actually happened was my 2 adults and 2 kids, even though we had put up rooms that could take 4 or 5 people, because we have those rooms, it decided to give me 2 rooms. Now, still on my panel on the left-hand side, it was 1 room. But what came back to me as a percentage package was 2 rooms. And that. So there's definitely incredible value out there, but you're really going to get it if you book direct.
Lovely. Thanks a million.
This is a great, Sarah Ward, thank you. Thank you for coming in there. That was a really great question and the perfect person to ask the question of. So thank you.
So say hello to Mary. Hold on.
Mary. Thank you, Sarah.
Colm O'Brien, this is everybody.
Hi.
Mary Fitzgerald.
How are you doing?
Can you recognise a few of the faces?
Oh my God, I do indeed, yes. Oh my goodness. How are you?
Mary. Lovely to meet you. Thank you for coming in to say hello to us.
Your photo was put up of you rolling out the red carpet. So just a
Oh
bit of a
my
talking
God. My hi, Celine, Stefan. How many more do I recognize there?
point. Brian
I
O'Callaghan.
love it. But we just wanted to say hello and to honour you for the work you do and for your family and for the iconic property that you have out there, but for the work that you've done as former president of the IHF, and indeed you must be very proud of Elaina as Victoria.
Yes, for that. I feel like I'm doing it all over again, 20 years. But I hear the round and I say, keep going.
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Exactly.
we just wanted to say hello. I'm going to ask Stefan, would you mind coming in and saying hello, Stefan, please? Come in and say a quick hello if you don't mind, if you can unmute yourself there.
Hello, Mary. Good to see you again.
Stefan, how are you? Always good to see you. And Anna.
And how things have changed since the last time we met at the conference.
What'd you say?
How things have changed since the last time we met.
The day after, immediately. It is incredible, absolutely. But yeah, doing a great job, and I just said we have such a challenge ahead of us. But look, in this industry, we get challenges every day. It's just how we just climb the mountains. It was hills, it's a mountain, definitely, there's no doubt about it. You know.
So actually, it might be worth mentioning, before we went into complete lockdown, there's a local hill here called Knockfearna, which many of you were probably familiar with, and none of the 2 of us had ever climbed it. So we said, you know what, after the kind of sense of, because we closed well ahead of lockdown, you know, we just felt very uncomfortable for our team and our guests. It was just a very strange period, and we got ahead of it. We closed on the 16th of March, Monday the 16th. So we decided then, I think it was St. Patrick's Day, was it?
Yes.
That symbolically that we would actually go and we climb Knockfearna. So it was that whole sense of, we're going to push our boundaries a little bit. We're going to go and we're going to start with something. It was that whole sense of climbing that hill, give a sense of, okay, there are mountains ahead and this is what we need to do. So we did a little kind of a video for our own team, actually. And I think we ended up putting it on our hotel social media. And the windswept, you can't hear a word or whatever. Now, unfortunately, we couldn't do it after that. But as we kind of emerge now into opening, I don't know when we're going to do it, but it's just sometimes you have to set yourself goals. So whether it's things like that or whether it's in your business career or around you, that all helps your mindset in terms of trying to get to where you're going or to contextualize it probably a little bit better.
Listen, just gorgeous, ladies, just beautiful. Thank you
very much indeed.
And Mary, you're off on Sunday, by the way. You're off on Sunday. You can climb the hill on Sunday.
We'll see about that. At the race, looking for, if anybody has 5 litres of epoxy resin lacquer, I'm looking for that at the moment with the bar almost finished, but we're short 5 litres, so that's my hunt at the moment. So we're now trying Northern Ireland. So if anyone has a contact in Paint, Northern Ireland, I'd love to hear from you. Great to see you, and I know we'll get there. Okay?
No doubt.
Bye.
God bless, Mary. God bless. There's not just...
What I should say is before that started, like every day, I suppose my days start very, very early. She dropped me up my breakfast, which you see here, right? This is only a mammy can do it for you. My Revive, which is our new fix. And then obviously all my other things. And I get a drip fed drinks and everything all day. And I get hauled out then for a walk as well, you know, just to keep everyone going. And as somebody said here, Mary is everyone's mammy. And it's interesting, we put a photo up on Facebook last year
and it was our most liked photo of the year. But actually, we sponsor Limerick ladies at Camokian football team, and we were doing a photo shoot out the front. My brother Connor, who would have very close ties with GA community in particular, he was standing, and in true mammy format, she was fixing his tie, you know, at near 40 years of age. But that ended up being the most liked photo of the year. So yeah, she keeps us all.
I'm delighted.
You heard, we'll see about that. That's the norm.
It's beautiful. Listen, it's just gorgeous, really gorgeous. We couldn't have asked for more. Thank you for inviting us into your home and to your business, which is your home, and to your family. It's just gorgeous, really beautiful. So thank you for that. I'm going to go to Princess Shelley for a few minutes because we're conscious of time. Folks, thank you for giving us your time today. Princess Shelley, fly around the comments if you don't mind, please.
Hey, thank you, Elaina. Wow, we have a bustling cafe here of everyone trying to putting in some lovely, lovely comments. A lot of love in the cafe for you, Elaina. And we were getting such a big player in this morning, and you're just so relatable and so lovely to listen to. And everybody's nodding and laughing with you, and it really, really is lovely. Celine was the first to pop in. She just said that the Fitzgerald suite is looking super behind you there, Elaina.
Celine is biased because she's my first cousin, and until she put on her camera well into it, I didn't realise what Celine we had. So morning, Celine.
So she's the first to pop in. So thank you for that comment, Celine. Janie mentioned when you were talking about multi-generational employees, says a lot about the ethos of your business. So that was again very early on in today's chat. So thank you for that, Janie. And Quiva Lally says, and I think this is a lovely comment, Elaina, it really is. She said, we're very lucky to have Elaina as president of the Irish Hotel Federation. She's a true inspiration to the industry, like her mother before her. Their hotel in Adare is an example of one of the best run hotels in the country. And when Elaina and I moved to Hotel Worcester, we always said that if there was one hotel that we would take inspiration from, it's the Woodlands Hotel in Adare. And of course, it's not Quiva, is it? It's Sean who was joining us from the Woodstock. He's joining us on his Quiva's account. But of course, Sean was on the Coffee at 11 show some time ago and is really hailing you as the fantastic leader that you clearly are with the Hotel Federation. So thank you, Sean, for popping that. Is that a lovely comment, Elaina? I saw that.
Sean, yeah. Yeah. Look, we're not good. My brother Connor always says, you know, a pat in the back is only inches away from a kick in the arse. Not that Sean would do that now by any means or measure. But look, we're all trying to go in the same direction. It's easy to do it when, you know, when you understand it and it's a common language. That's the reality of it.
I saw that comment come in quite early, and I was quite looking forward to reading it because I'd see that it was so lovely, you know. So like I say, guys, lots and lots and lots. James is joining us as well. He was saying that the Kerry County Council, they've done a lot for Indigenous tourism around there, and he's grateful for that. And Donach O'Brien is very tempted to pop over to us in Ireland. He's saying how lovely it is to visit. Again, a previous guest on the show. You can give everyone a wave there, Donach. And he's saying that Ireland is a very attractive place to come. And Kathy Mera, who's joining us from the States, said she appreciates you sharing your story. So lovely to meet your beautiful mom, a real role model, and just backing up your to say always book direct. So, and James Finnegan loves you. Continue to reference your team. So like I say, I'm sorry that I haven't been able to get to everybody. Harriet McGuigan says, so relatable for all of us in business. Keep going, climb the hills and then the mountains, and always have goals. And she's loving Mary Fitzgerald. So thank you very much, Elaina. I'm sorry I've skimmed through everybody today. I'm sure we've got lots and lots of lovely comments more there that I'm sure Katrina often sends them to you, Elaina, so you can see them yourself. Before I hand to Colm, everybody, the links, Eamon's popped them in, so you can access the links there straight to the Woodlands Hotel and take a look at that great gem there in Adare. So have a look at that. It's over to you, Colm. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Princess Shelley. Elaina, that's just part of our format here in the cafe that has evolved over the last few months, because this was COVID born. There was no plan, but it's turned into this very lovely environment. I hope you would agree with that. It's a very homely little environment, even though it's virtual, right? It's got this real cafe feel to it. And but part of that, as Shelley said before the show, some people's apparently favourite part of the show is the Princess Shelley piece. We're just putting that out there. But it really is beautiful because she does get to represent all of the comments that have come in, people honouring your story at different elements. I always say we've all heard the same words, we just listen with different ears, so it's lovely to get the perspectives. So Elaina, thank you for taking the time. And
folks, for listening. And if you do nothing else, just think about the next time you're taking that cup of coffee. Think about the next time that you go for a bite to eat, or if it's your takeaway or whatever. Keep it local. You know, in terms of your holidays, and someone referred to it like Kerry put out Staycation. They sent to every household in Kerry staycation vouchers. Now, look, we're working on something around that space right now. But you know what I would say, book with confidence. The safety charter came out yesterday, and yes, there's more we can do. And I think somebody mentioned it, a quick skim there in terms of videos and that. And there's work going on in that domain. But I will definitely say book with confidence. I even see in the context of our own hotel, 2 out of every department went and did, you know, a level 5 infectious diseases control program. Every member of staff has to do, in our case, they'll actually be doing 3 different induction or base levels of training. They're only required to do 1, but they're doing 3 just to get the sense of it. So, you know, we've the procedures, everything. And look, people are going to make mistakes along the way. We're all human. And just that we're tolerant and that we're helpful, because we have a role to play in all those interactions as well in terms of our behaviour, you know, and that. So go out and start booking with confidence. You don't all have to come to Adare. There's lots of other lovely hotels around the country. I see somebody from the Armada is here as well, which is a great spot. But, you know, they need you and you'll have a great experience. You know, it won't be, you know, like Stefan, I think, referred to it, or earlier on, you know, it's the notion of we're in the hospitality business, not the hospital business. But, you know, I keep saying clinically cleaned, clinically reassured, but delivered and passionately with love. And that's, I suppose, what we're trying to do, just to get the balance right now.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Book with confidence, book direct, book with confidence, staycation, wear the green jersey. And you know what, we'll come through this together. Elaina, just beautiful. Just 2 minutes, we let you go. Folks, that was a gorgeous Coffee at 11 show. Beautiful way to finish the week. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Elaina Fitzgerald in particular, for being here. Let me just tell you before I let you go what's happening on Monday. Harriet McGuigan did have a comment there in Princess Shelley's piece, and Harriet's coming in as my special guest on Monday. Really looking forward to that. Harriet is talk about something completely different. Harriet is a psychotherapist based out of Kerry, based in the Kingdom. And she's a psychotherapist whose work is around stopping children being bullied and stopping adults being bullied. I'm really excited because they're 2 very, as well as one topic, but it's 2 very different cohorts. Really looking forward to that, Harriet. So looking forward to that on Monday. Thank you for popping in today. Folks, I want to thank the team as ever. It's all about team. Princess Shelley for producing today's show. Yes, indeed. Big heart emoji. I want to thank Eamon Smith for keeping us safe and secure, and for at the last minute going off and finding those lovely images to add colour and value to the story. Not that it needed any value add, but it added colour, and a picture paints 1,000 words. And of course, Katrina O'Brien in advance for making this beautiful to go to our growing international audience overnight. We get it. It'll be out there tomorrow at some stage, folks. Thank you. I want to thank wigwam.ie SME Peer Support for their support. And I'll finish the show, as I always do, by saying to my special guest, it's been a pleasure. Elaina Fitzgerald, namaste.
Namaste. It reminds me back in the days in India. Folks, thanks very much for listening in and for your fantastic contributions and feedback. Thanks, Colm, for inviting me. I was delighted. And, you know, I wish you all, I suppose, a very safe summer as we reopen and get out and about. And, you know, look, it's a whole new world, but new eyes, fresh approach. There's nothing that we can't do.